Hi, everybody. Welcome to Proline Daily. Jim Feist and myself, Dave Koken. It's the longest-running sports handicapping show in America, direct from Las Vegas. And, Jim, it's Championship Monday. We're going to take a look at the North Carolina Gonzaga showdown. Before we do that, 58-31, the current NBA run. 3-1 with your final four picks, including both dogs getting the money on Saturday.
Yeah, it's been a great basketball season. I'm looking forward to the NBA playoffs. That's when you get down to the real deal. And, you know, this super talent in the NBA will be out there 100% trying to win. And that's what I like.
Poll question of the week. On our social media networks, we post a Proline poll question and announce your results here on the show. And we asked, which is the best way to wager on tonight's North Carolina Gonzaga finale, the side or the total? What was the results, Jim?
37% shows Gonzaga, and they were looking at a +1.5 line at that time. It's still +1 in most places. 39% said North Carolina minus the 1.5, so that is actually one now. So you might look at a little bit of a skew, but it's pretty damn even, yep. Dave. And I think that most of the sharps and the squares and the pros and all that, I think they're about split on the game. 12% said they were going to bet the total, but that was also split also. So this is dead even. I mean, you got the bigs inside, and I think the biggest question there is how much of a factor will Zach Collins bring to this game? He is a freshman. He didn't have that big of a role all year, but now he has a huge role. They played the two bigs, 2 7-footers a lot the other day. So that's going to be an issue because most of the knock on Gonzaga is that they didn't play a very strong schedule and they never really were tested down at the end. But in the tournament so far, here's who North Carolina has beaten. And I'm going to give you the ratings. Southern Texas, 66. Arkansas, 86. Kentucky, 89. That's close to 90. Oregon, 89. Now, you look at the other side, Gonzaga, who did they play in this tournament? Because that's all we can go by now. I don't care who they played back in November. Gonzaga played South Dakota State, 73. Northwestern, 83. Now they get into some numbers. West Virginia, 94. Xavier, 90. South Carolina, 91. Actually, when you add those numbers up, in this tournament, Gonzaga has played the tougher opponents. Now, I know people are saying that isn't the case.
Well, that's because they go by the seeding.
Yeah, well, that's all bullshit.
Which doesn't make any sense.
Well, the seeding was wrong. I mean, we had 12s that were favored over 5s this year. Yeah. The committee that put this seeding together had their head totally up their ass.
Right.
And so, they should never be allowed out of their house again. That's how dumb they were. But no, the ratings are the ratings. These are the actual ratings of these teams. Gonzaga played the tougher teams down the stretch here in the tournament, and that's the fact of life. So I don't think that, you know, a little bit of a problem with Barry, the guard for North Carolina with the 2 ankle problems. Both of these teams had big leads in their last game, and both of them gave it up. The Dogs covered. Both the favorites won, but they only won straight up. They did not cover the number. When I started out this tournament, I said there was no team in the country that was that good that you could really depend on them. And that's proven, because all these teams, even though they're there, they have not been able to cover numbers. And when you look at Gonzaga, they've covered 1 number, lost 3, and pushed 1, and that could have been a loss too. So then you have the other side. That's right. In North Carolina, they've covered twice and lost 3 times to the number. So both these teams have been underperforming with regards to the Vegas line. That's not all that impressive. And a lot of people look at that and say, that's pretty mediocre. None of these teams are really outperforming their own potential. They're not even living up to their own potential.
I think the factor for me, and I don't have a strong opinion of the game. I made that clear in the blog. So, half unit max for me. And to me, people who put big money on this game are just guessing because there's very little to choose. I think Gonzaga might actually have slightly more talent. But one factor I do like on the North Carolina side, all their key guys, they don't need to have good memories to think back to a year ago, basically today, and losing a heartbreaker at the buzzer to Villanova. I mean, this whole team, all these guys played in that game. So I think they're, if you have that championship game pressure, I think North Carolina may be a little more used to the surroundings than Gonzaga. So that could be an early edge for the Tar Heels. But once the game gets rolling, I think that goes out the window. So I made a very slight lean on North Carolina, and that's as far as I went on the game, Jim. I don't think there's much to choose between these teams. I think they're very even. They power rate about the same. Mark Few has made some very good in-game adjustments. You might want to give him a slight edge, I suppose, over Williams as far as that goes. But, it's really splitting hairs. This is what a championship game actually should be. A game that's really tough to call going in. I'm sure there's some people listening right now that are absolutely convinced that either North Carolina or Gonzaga is the better team, but the numbers just don't bear it out. The numbers say this is a really close game. I power rated it at North Carolina 1.5. That's also where I thought the line would come, so I got that right. And unfortunately, getting that right doesn't really give me a side in the game. So.
Well, normally, if this was a game during the week and they had 10 other games to choose from,
no chance I'm playing.
You'd probably pass it. But it is a marquee game. It's a game we all are going to watch. It's going to have a big audience. I think we should mention this. We don't talk about women's basketball much, collegiate basketball, but the other day, Mississippi State knocked off Connecticut, who had won 111 consecutive games, which is absolutely incredible. Well, they knocked them off, and of course, coming off, that was an overtime game, and I think their previous game was overtime as well. They came out a little bit behind the 8 ball emotionally against South Carolina, who, by the way, South Carolina women's and South Carolina men's basketball programs did pretty darn good this year.
I guess they did.
South Carolina came out and won that game. And it was great. There was a good program, great entertainment, and that's what filled the basketball entertainment for yesterday on the collegiate level because there was no men's program. Of course, baseball kicked off on Saturday.
Blown saves galore on Sunday.
That was Sunday, actually. What was that?
I said you only had 3 games yesterday, and you had big blown saves in 2 of them. So,
well, I think what happened is
last year.
San Francisco didn't pay enough to this closer that came in. What's his last? Melancon or something?
Melanson.
They paid him $68 million. They should have come out of pocket the extra $2 million. Maybe then he'd have pitched, because he just absolutely gave the game away. I was looking at the odds. San Francisco's ahead, I think 5-4 going into the bottom of the 9th. I had San Francisco in that game, so I lost it. But there was 2 outs in the 9th, nobody on, which gives Arizona about a 5% chance of winning the game at that point. And sure enough, they come back and win the game. So it was a hell of a way. I had Tampa Bay earlier against the Yankees, so that was a winner. It was a slight underdog when I bet it, and but that was a tough way to lose for the Giants. And it's just funny how you pay these guys so much money, and that was just absolutely ugly.
Well, it happened in the Cubs-Cardinals game too. I mean, the Cardinals, you got the game seemingly wrapped up, and you got what wasn't called an error, but it clearly was on Matt Carpenter, and that didn't keep the inning going, but it would have been 2 outs and 1 on. And instead it's 1 out and 2 on, and the guy hits the ball over the wall, and that's it, 3-3. Cubs end up getting the win. Excuse me, the Cardinals end up getting the win anyway in the bottom of the ninth as Randall Grichuk came through with the big hit. And it goes back to an old argument I have, and I'm going to beat this. I will beat this to a pulp all year long. You're going to hear me talking about this. That's on Joe Madden, okay? And the reason I say this over and over again, I have never agreed with this philosophy, the cut and dried way of managing the ninth inning. If you're the home team, you put the closer out there to preserve the tie in the ninth inning, which makes sense. If you're the road team, we saw this, and it never stops. We see this over and over again, and people tell me, well, no, that's just not the way it's done. Well, it ought to be the way it's done. Why didn't the Cubs have their closer out there in the bottom of the ninth inning? It's a 3-3 tie. You got to save the game right there. To me, just because it's not technically a save doesn't mean it's not what amounts to a save situation in that game. I want my best guy out there. If he's not available for extra innings, who cares? You got to get to extra innings first. If you don't get to extra innings, then all that means is you didn't use your best guy and you ended up losing the game. It goes back to that playoff situation last year with the Orioles, and I'm screaming, bring Zach Britton in the game. Zach Britton never got in the game for the Orioles in their playoff game, and they ended up going home in a one-and-done situation. Well, last night they bring in Montgomery. He's not a bad pitcher. I'm not knocking the guy, but he's not their closer. He's not Wade Davis. That's the guy they paid in the offseason to get the big outs. He's sitting out in the bullpen not doing anything. I think big league managers handle it all wrong, and I'm right on this seemingly more often than I'm not. So to me, that's on Madden. Bring your guy in and get him out there in a 3-3 game. Then worry about things. Worry about what you got to do to protect the lead in the 10th or 11th or 12th or whatever it is at that point. The idea is you got to keep the game going. Montgomery didn't, and the Cardinals are 1-0, and the Cubs are 0-1. So there's my rant for the day.
I agree with you, Dave. I mean, I'll do the same thing in basketball. When you're up 3 points at the end of the game, there's 5 seconds on the clock, and the other team is bringing the ball down. You know they're going to shoot a three. Foul them.
Yeah. Well, the only argument, I have one argument against that, and it's not a strategic argument because clearly that's the right move from a strategic standpoint. The problem is that a lot of these teams, now we saw it executed perfectly, absolutely perfectly by Gonzaga on Saturday against South Carolina. But a lot of times you'll watch this in the regular season and the coach that tries to foul, the players can't execute it. They're just not smart enough to execute it properly. They end up fouling on a 3-shot opportunity.
Well,
I see it over and over. And that's why a lot of coaches, I think, don't utilize that strategy because I don't know how else to say this. They're afraid their players will screw it up, and they're probably right.
You know what? That is an excellent point. I think the strategy is right to do it.
Yes.
But if your players can't perform it correctly, then that's not going to work.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen it so many times. Like they just don't know when to commit the foul. Gonzaga did it perfectly. What did they get at 3.5 or 4.5? They couldn't have done it any better. If they'd have waited at all, somebody would have launched the 3, and they might have lost the basketball game. But that's what good teams can execute that stuff. Anyway, let me give you a free opinion for tonight. I have one, and this is on the Angels-A's game, and I don't have a lot in terms of concrete stuff on the game. I think the pitching matchup between Alaska and Graveman's fairly even. I would rate the bullpens fairly even. In fact, I might even give a very slight bullpen edge to Oakland. But I think I've stated this a few times, so it's reinforcing something I've already stated. I think the Angels are underrated by a lot of people coming into this season. The over and under win total on them was that they would be a losing team. I think they're going to be a winning team. It won't take long for the odds makers to catch up if I'm right. But I think there's a little value on the Angels coming out of the gate. And Oakland, I know you don't put a lot into preseason, but they did lose 6 in a row to end the preseason. Not exactly the way you want to go into the season. I don't think, well, I mean, this isn't exactly a revelation. They're a pretty bad baseball team. They're going to finish last in that division. And I think 70 wins is about as much as you're going to get with Oakland. And that's reflected in the total. So I think there's a little value in the Angels at minus 110 here. I think I make the game minus 125. So some value on the Angels and enough for a small play on the Halos, Jim.
Well, that sounds good. I didn't bet that game. I have a couple of total plays. I'm looking at some side plays, but I have not fired the gun yet on some of them because, like I said, I go a little slower in the morning.
Yep.
You know,
Same
at the beginning of the season, you want to see these teams get their feet on the ground and you know, I like to get through one rotation at least with the starters and some bullpen usage and stuff, you know, to get it going. But you know, I noticed that this one game, this is interesting to me, is that Milwaukee, and I know you have good insight on all these games, Dave. Milwaukee opens up a 119 favorite at home. That's Gray against Guerrera. And now Gray is favored 122, 125 on the road.
Yep.
You feel that's a warranted move? Because Milwaukee is a team a lot of us thought that they might be a fairly solid team this year.
Well, I'm not one of those people.
Oh, you like the other side of it?
No, I don't. Well, no, I don't. The Rockies are going to have to prove it to me too. But I do like John Gray against Javier Guerra, or Junior Guerra. I beg your pardon. Guerra, I thought Guerra was a bit of a fluke last year, and I think he's going to get knocked all over the place this season. But the Rockies, of course, have never been a great road team, so it's not a game I chose to get involved in. But I understand the support for the Rockies. I think bettors are looking at Gray as a legit number one starter, and he might very well be that. Quality pitcher. And the Brewers, Guerra, I think, look, let's put it this way. For people who look at exhibition stats, they can't be real enthused about how Guerra pitched down in Arizona. He was absolutely horrible this spring. And you will get action against some guys who had nothing in the spring